News Radio 600 Kogo. San Diego Business Saturday is on the air. Welcome to your weekend. I'm Sully. It's going to be a good one today. So great to have you along today. We're going to talk to Christina Gustin from UBS and RKG Wealth Management. Also, very special guest today, George Chamberlain, our business editor here at News Radio 600 Kogo. I'm really happy to have George here. George is the guy who sort of taught me how to do business radio 23 years ago. I'm going to have a little chat with him about the markets. Also, Tom Del Beccaro, author of The Divided Era, contributor to Fox Business and CNBC, will be joining us to talk about this trade war. And Mike Hess Brewing has a pretty cool event coming up next weekend, and we're going to talk about it. San Diego Business Saturday is on the air. All right, so let's get right into this, because what it's coming down to is the market is really, well, if you ask the question, what's driving the market, which is what you should ask yourself anyway, really what's driving the market is trade talks, the Fed. Those are the two things. And I just want to tell you this. Stocks closed their best week of the year last week. Not this week we just went through, but last week, okay? On the expectations of a rate cut. NASDAQ led, I think, 2%. S&P and the Dow were more than 1%. This week, we're up all about anywhere from 0.5% to 1%. And again, this is all driven by trade, but in this case, this week, it was driven by the silence. It was driven by the fact that there wasn't a knee-jerk reaction in the market. You know, in May, the S&P fell 6.6%, and the Dow dropped 6.7%. And you know what the NASDAQ did? 7.9%. And then from that point, we dropped 10% from our recent highs. That is a correction, my friends. That is technically in fact, when you drop 10% from your recent highs, that is by definition a correction. So why am I talking about this? Because the Dow Jones Industrial Average finished this sort of nonsensical fear and greed trade off of China and Mexico and the Fed and everything as strong as it ever did. We had a very scary inflation number this week. 0.1%. Yes, 0.1%. What that means is that all of this noise that we saw, people jumping out of this and that and selling, and which, by the way, all they did was lock in their losses, it should be a really good lesson for you that you don't buy on the rumor, you don't sell on the news, you use fundamental investing principles in your portfolio, like, let's look at how much debt's on the books of the companies you want to invest in. Let's take a look at the overall market. Let's listen to the word on the street. Let's not buy Beyond Meat because it went up 30% today. Oh my gosh, it's on a tear, I got to get in. Followed by a 17% loss the next day and a 12% loss the next day. We're just fish when we do stuff like that. And I don't like to get political on this program. I'm going to get a little political here. Because, look, I am not a big fan of Donald Trump, at least his personality. I'm a big fan of his economy and his ability to negotiate. You know, I do about 40 keynotes a year on what's called the simplicity of negotiation. It's called You Are What You Negotiate. You can go to sullyspeaks.com if you want to catch a little bit of that. But I'm a student of this because I spend a lot of time negotiating for a lot of publicly traded companies and their capital and such. But as I watch this entire arc of this story, starting with China until today, I say to myself, is it possible that Donald Trump is playing chess and the rest of the world is playing checkers? And the reason I say that is because look what he asked for 3 months ago. He asked for a rate cut by the Fed, and the Fed basically laughed him in the face and said, your economy is too strong for a rate cut. And then he sees a stock market that has gone up since his presidency probably too far, too fast, and he knows there's going to be a correction or a pullback coming. So why not, and I'm speculating here, but why not poke the bear with China? Why not point him in the chest and say, hey, look, you put tariffs on 97% of our goods. We only put tariffs on 42% of your goods. We're putting tariffs on 100% of your goods. What did the market do on that tweet 3 Sundays ago? We went up to $1 trillion off of market cap. Dow Jones, or NASDAQ, as I just mentioned, corrected. Then it fizzles out. And then here comes Mexico. Now, Mexico's got a $2.5 billion supply chain with San Diego, California. And he, once again, threatens, this time for political purposes, to place tariffs on Mexican imports. Well, talk about not being able to stuff the genie back in the bottle. We are so far inserted in that economy. And of course, at the last minute, they come to an accord. Now, let's look at the end of the day what happened. He asked for a rate cut 3 months ago. Looks like he's going to get a rate cut. The market rallied, not once, but twice. And I bet you the next thing out of his mouth is going to be, as part of this trade deal with Mexico, Mexico's paying for the wall. Now, I'm just speculating, but is it possible? Because those facts taken on their own look like Donald Trump is a pretty smart guy. Again, you have to separate the personality, and I've said this before, and I don't mind saying it again. Donald Trump is the guy who makes your 401k go up 500%, but you don't want him at the Christmas party, right? Here to talk about all of this is my good friend Christina Gustin, smartest girl in finance. She runs RKG Wealth Management. She also is a senior executive vice president, or I think senior vice president over at UBS, and she joins us every week. I don't like to get political on this show, Christina, but as I lay that out, does it sort of make sense that maybe the tail wagged the dog here a little bit? I mean,
it's one of the most logical conspiracy theories I've heard in a long time.
I know, right? I know.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So let's talk about this. So we're on pace for sort of getting back to normal here after this correction happened in the NASDAQ and after we took a dip. It's interesting just how sort of quiet it was this week. Now, some people could say this is a calm before the storm. Others would say that the economy is so strong that the market is following suit. What do your smart people over there, including yourself, analysts and such, sort of feel about the overall health of the market right now?
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree with you more right now. It's been interesting, even despite, the big protests over in Hong Kong. We've got escalating conflict with Iran over in the Gulf of Oman and tankers being torpedoed. And the markets have been very quiet. I think, like you said earlier, they're very focused on the Fed meeting next week, which will hopefully give us insight into which direction interest rates are going and are we getting a cut or not. And then the week after that is the G20 meeting over in Japan. So hopefully, our expectation is that President Trump and the President of China will have a meeting. That hasn't been confirmed, but both of those things could be major volatility triggers. And I think you're right. Everyone's kind of holding their breath to see what happens.
And I know that I never ask you to predict and such, but overall markets, if you look at how the Fed has acted over the years, going back to Alan Greenspan. I mean, Alan Greenspan literally would dial down interest rates. The stock market would go up the next day. I mean, almost like in the old days when a company like Qualcomm, for example, laid off 2,000 people, their stock went up because obviously their earnings went up. That's what it worked. For a while, it wasn't like that. And then you saw Ben Bernanke, with the quantitative easing and such, and when even the hint of more quantitative easing helped the market and such. It's a little bit dicey here these days because if you think in terms of what's going on with the Fed, their job is to stabilize inflation and keep prices from growing too quickly and keep interest rates down. But they don't set interest rates on our credit cards. They don't set interest rates on our mortgages. They don't set interest rates on our car loans. They don't even set prices. The economy is strong. Inflation's low. And I think that's worrying the Fed because if you think, stubbornly low inflation is raising question about whether the central bank can achieve one of its primary goals, and that is to keep prices growing slowly and steadily, which indicates a growing economy. Now, when you talk about a Fed coming in next week, are you concerned that they could surprise everyone and that would jolt the market, or is it going to be that big of a piece?
Well, keep in mind that last week, Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, said that the central bank stands ready to take appropriate action in the event of slowing growth. He didn't promise a rate cut, and the markets have absolutely priced in not just a single rate cut, but possibly several, up to 100 basis points, which is a full % over the next 12 months. That's a lot of rate cutting, and we don't believe that the statistics in the economy and all the leading indicators justify. I mean, it would take a recession to justify, in our view, that level of cut. So I think there could be a surprise next week if he doesn't cut, which honestly has given us some opportunities this week because a lot of fixed income products have appreciated so much on these kind of plummeting the 10 years under 2.1 right now. I mean, it's crazy how quickly the move has happened.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I think sort of the wait and see here is going to have to be, sort of what happens over the next few days. Because I agree with you, Christina. I think if there's a surprise stand pat move, in other words, if interest rates are not dropped by a little bit, I think we're going to see something pretty significant happen in the market. It's not going to be a good thing. Now, I don't think it's going to be a correction, but I think, once again, the market might be taking into consideration a rate cut, which again, this is sort of what we thought was going to happen. Christina Gustin, thank you so much. Christina Gustin with UBS Financial, RKG Wealth Management. We'll put our website up at kogo.com, keyword Sully. Just in case you want to call her, 619-557-4758. And I can put that up at the website. Also, it'll be on bigbizshow.com as well. Hey, I'm Sully. It's San Diego Business Saturday. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. It's about to get even better because I got George Chamberlain, Kogo business editor, going to be joining me in just 1 second. News Radio 600 Kogo. Hey, News Radio 600 Kogo, San Diego Business Saturday. Welcome to your weekend. Thanks again to Christina Gustin from UBS and RKG Wealth Management for joining us here. I am Sully. Catch me every morning filling in for George Chamberlain on the San Diego Morning News. I'll be there for a little while. And then over on KUSI, Good Morning San Diego in the mornings. And, of course, Big Biz Show, which has been around thanks to a very gracious George Chamberlain about 23 years ago for letting us in the radio studio. I give him a lot of credit for that. I'm not sure if he wants credit for that, though. Great to have you along today. We're going to be talking to Tom Del Beccaro in just a little bit. Tom Del Beccaro wrote the book, The Divided Era, but he's also a contributor to CNBC and Fox Business and such, and he's going to talk about the trade wars and such. And then Mike Hess, a local CEO from Mike Hess Brewing, and you've seen him here in studio before. And by the way, speaking of seen him, of course, you're listening to us on the airwaves across Southern California on News Radio 600 Kogo, but we shoot a TV version of this through Jump Television Studios, and you can, right after this broadcast, go to kogo.com, keyword Sully, and you can actually watch the TV version of the San Diego Business Saturday. By the way, it's Father's Day weekend, and George Chamberlain wrote a really great blog on our kogo.com website, keyword money, about record Father's Day spending, or at least we're hoping so, us fathers. And in fact, let's get right to George, because I think he's there waiting. George, great to have you along, sir. Nice to talk to you.
Hey, good to be with you. We're doing this in the car on my end, Sully, but I'm not driving. So
well, that's good.
Okay.
That's good. So as long as we're not breaking any laws here. First of all, George, I met you on a sister station, which is no longer part of our family here at iHeart Media, 23 years ago, and you had been doing business radio for a long time, and I was just an investment banking guy that was dipping my toe into radio, and I learned so much from you at the time, but I remember at the time just how much you had your finger on the pulse of not only business, and remember, that was sort of the dot-com era when we first met, and
Sure.
when I first got on there, but you also had your finger on the pulse of San Diego business, and that sort of continued through your career, not only here on Kogo, but with the local periodicals. If I'm not mistaken, San Diego Daily Transcript and San Diego Business Journal, and of course, all the television you've done. What I have to ask you is, I've never got a chance to ask you this in all the time we worked together, and I've been able to talk to you. What is the one consistent thing about San Diego that keeps us as the center of innovation and the center of sort of technology? What can we attribute that to? Is that a UCSD thing, or is that just the fact that we have good genes here in San Diego?
I think there's a lot of things going on here. What has always been disappointing to me about San Diego is the fact that we still are considered, the cul-de-sac of California, and most of the exciting stuff, if you would, goes on up in Silicon Valley and all of that. And so we have a lot of opportunities here. But think about this. This is a big community with a lot of technology involved, and yet we only have 3 or 4 Fortune 500 companies that are based in San Diego. And we don't get the respect that we deserve, and I don't know why, but it is a great area and a lot of good things going on. And our economy is growing much faster than many other parts of California. And you look at our unemployment rate here, it's staggeringly low, and the growth rate is staggeringly high. So there's a lot of really good things going on here, as there always have been, good times, bad times. San Diego, I think, always weathers the storm much better than anywhere else.
Sure. George Chamberlain is the News Radio 600 KOGO business editor and has been a mentor of mine, whether he knows it or not, for a long, long time. And I get a lot of my show prep by listening to George. I have to admit that. And so everything that you hear from me, you probably heard from George first. Let's talk about the overall market here, because as you know, this market recently has been running on fear and greed more than usual, and of course, with the trade talks, which I call sort of what the market's paying attention to, and a potential Fed interest rate cut. In your opinion, overall market, should we be sitting back and waiting for the noise to quiet, or in your opinion, is this maybe an opportunity to jump in on some of these value plays?
I think about 2 weeks ago, we were in a situation where trade was terror. We were so afraid of terror, and that the attempt to replace NAFTA was going to fall apart, and we were going to do this, and the markets went into a tailspin, dropping more than $1,000. On that Friday evening, Mexico says, we're good to go with this new deal. We're all set to go with this deal. And so we come back, and last week we were up over 1,000 points. So, I mean, this whole trade thing is a bunch of hooey. I've been saying Sully, for some time. There is no trade tariff crisis out there at all. All of this stuff will be done. All of it will be settled, and everything will move along swimmingly. So I don't have any. To me, trade talk and moving the market just creates a buying opportunity. If it makes the markets move down, it just creates a great buying opportunity. I look at some of the stocks I own and how they corrected hard, and then the next week they're up. They regained everything they lost.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the tail wagging the dog, it felt like. I mean, a little bit of of a manufacturer. I mean, listen, I don't like to be political on this show, but it did sort of feel like there was a lot of bluster. And at the end, here we are, it's sort of where we were. So, hey, look, this Sunday is the annual celebration of our dear old dad. I'm reading this right off of your blog. In fact, George writes a terrific blog right here on kogo.com, keyword money. As a matter of fact, I promoted last week's blog quite a bit because I read it and I actually used it for our national television show, Big Biz Show, why this may be a good time to finally buy a home. And he wrote that about 10 days ago. And I'll tell you, man, I think you nailed it. You brought up some stuff that we haven't talked about for a long time, but we started this year with the constant fear that mortgage rates would be disastrous for the housing market, but they've been saying, you and I have been on business radio long enough where we've heard every mortgage guy in town say that for 20 years. Rates are never going to be lower, it's going to crash. Talk about a little bit about the real estate market.
Now, what they've been doing more so than that is at the beginning of every year since 2009, when we were in the Great Recession, they're saying, okay, you better get going. This is the year where interest rates go up. And they don't. They don't. And right now we're at, like a 19-year low on mortgage interest rates?
Yeah, it's amazing.
What are you waiting for, folks? Come on.
Yeah, in your opinion, is it still, in your opinion, because you're an equities guy as well as an overall balanced financial picture guy, is it good to have a little real estate in your portfolio? Because I talk to more and more people who are in either one of two camps, much like politically. We're in one of two camps these days. People are either in equities or they're in real estate, but I'm never going to do both. I sort of feel like we're missing the boat if we don't sort of spread it around a little bit between real estate and equities. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Real estate is a great investment. I love REITs, income REITs, publicly traded, and I'm a big fan of those. And I also think that I'm a dividend junkie.
Sure.
I love dividends so much, and so I look at the dividend aristocrats and look at the kind of companies that are on available there, and they're really spectacular companies. You get that constant cash flow of 2, 3, 4% a year, and it's going to go up every year. Dividends are just the no-brainer. I like to make investing as easy as I possibly can, and using dividend-paying stocks like Warren Buffett and many other great investors have done. It's just so incredibly simple and easy.
Well, and also it's free money is always good. So that's how you have to.
Good. No
Hey,
doubt.
listen, before I let you out of here today, once again, George Chamberlain joins us here on San Diego Business Saturday, and he's been such a mentor to me and my career in business radio. In fact, I don't think I would have a national show if it were not for me just listening and watching George early in my career. I know how close you are to your family. I know you have a daughter that lives very close to you. I know you have a son that lives in Seattle, and you've been talking about your grandson, for 15 years, because he's 15 years old, and I remember when he was born. You write in your blog here this week on Kogo.com, keyword money, Father's Day spending set to hit a hit record. I love that, first of all, because as a dad, I want it to hit us a hit record, because we're gonna get more stuff. We're gonna get more stuff. But the National Retail Federation says we're gonna spend $16 billion on Father's Day this year. That's good news for dads.
Oh, sure it is. It's better news for Mom, because Mom gets a lot more than that, and she deserves it. Mom always deserves it. So, yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's really a neat time, and have some time with our grandson here in a week or so is going to be really a blessing for my wife and I, that's for sure.
Well, George, we're all praying for you, and we miss you here in the mornings and in the studio, and I can't wait to sleep in again when you're back here doing
I appreciate
I'm
that.
losing sleep while you're gone there. George, thank you so much for swinging by. I really appreciate you taking the time. George Chamberlain, the business editor here on News Radio 600 Kogo. And if you get a chance, go read his blog at Kogo.com, keyword money. I mean, there's a number of resources there, all the way from are you nervous about your stock market holdings? He talks, George has interviewed every captain of industry that there could be over the last literally 35 years in business. And if you want to get some insight on what goes on in San Diego business as well as national business, go visit that blog, and of course keep your prayers going for George, because he sounds strong as ever, and he sounds like he's feeling good, looking forward to this Father's Day weekend. Okay, coming up, Tom Del Beccaro, who wrote the book The Divided Era, he's been on the program a number of times. He's going to break down where we are in this trade deal, because I happen to agree with George Chamberlain, and I sort of said that in my dialogue in the very beginning, that it's been a little bit of the tail wagging the dog here. You know, some people might say that Donald Trump is a genius because of how he sort of orchestrated a manufactured sort of crisis with trades, because in George's words there isn't going to be a trade issue. The other side of the fence, where do we go from here? Because the market sure reacts to it. All right. It's San Diego Business Saturday. I'm Sully. You can catch me every morning on the Kogo Morning News, filling in for George for a little while. Of course, every weekend right here at 9 o'clock. And on Good Morning San Diego, as well as BigBizShow.com. Got some news and traffic, and it's back. News Radio 600 Kogo.
It's going to look like this year.
One more shopping day until Father's Day, girls. I hope my daughters McKenna and Delaney are listening. They happen to be in town this week, so. News Radio 600 Kogo. It's San Diego Business Saturday. Thank you so much to George Chamberlain, our business editor, for swinging by for a few minutes this morning on a busy weekend, a busy Father's Day weekend, and giving us his wisdom and his musings on the market, as well as trade, as well as the real estate market, and of course is on Father's Day. So, coming up in just a few minutes, I've got Mike Hess from Mike Hess Brewing, a very special event coming up for a very special charity. You're not going to want to miss it, because there's beer involved, and you're going to see me there and Rusty Nails there. I can't say officially that Donna's going to be there, but I bet I could talk her into coming, so you might be able to hang out with us a little bit. We'll tell you about that. In the meantime, Dow Jones, NASDAQ, S&P all up about 0.1% for the week, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you consider where we were just a couple of weeks ago, where we wiped $1 trillion off the table on the fears of a trade deal going south, it sort of looks good. You know, the last week, by the way, the Dow closed their best week of the year on a rate cut expectation, and it looks like on Monday, as the Fed gets together, you're going to see that rate cut. Now, again, I talked about this with Tom Del Beccaro on the Big Biz Show this week, and Tom, of course, as I mentioned, he's an attorney, he's an author, he's a media pundit, he's a financial analyst, and he's the proprietor of politicalvanguard.com. And I mentioned to him my theory that you heard me talk at the top of the show with Christine Augustin about the fact that could this be a little bit of the tail wagging the dog with respect to the China trade tariffs. I think there's no one that's more qualified to talk about that because he's at the tip of the spear politically and in business, and that's Tom Del Beccaro. Tom, thanks for swinging by today, pal.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. Another busy week.
Yeah, I'll say.
When it comes to trade deals. We saw Trump's top economist and a friend of mine, Larry Kudlow, talk about the fact that, look, Trump's the first guy to take China on after decades. And I recently wrote in Fox, look, we can't simply do free trade with China. China has national security implications, and they want to rule the world, buy up the ports, and place America in a second-class situation economically and militarily. So I'm not saying we shouldn't trade with them, but we shouldn't trade with them on their terms. And that's, again, what Chairman Kudlow referenced this week, and he's absolutely right about that. Now, we also need to remember that this past week that senators from the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, sent a letter to Mike Pompeo and to the U.S. Trade Representatives, and it was a bipartisan letter, and the issue was, that, according to the letter, allowing the use of Huawei equipment as U.S. telecommunications infrastructure is harmful to our national security, and you got to agree with that. Allowing China's company, that company is not just a free company; it has strong ties to the Chinese military. Allowing them to collect and transport data is a national security issue. And so this is a complicated thing that's going to move in fits and starts. You're going to have weeks that are good or bad. They're going to have, as you like to say, the market's driven by fear and greed, and there's going to be those weeks when irrational fear takes hold. But again, by the end of the year, I expect some progress and some concessions that will be meaningful. I don't think the 2020 election is going to come around without a China deal.
So here's my question for you. I think a lot of people forget, and I think everybody knows, but I don't think people keep it front and center when they're thinking about China and our economy and their politics, is that they're not the hallmark for honesty, and they never have been. And I think that's part of what people sort of need to think about to even out A, their fear, but B, don't underestimate China either. Let me give you an example. The rare earth metal question. Now, rare earth metals, oftentimes called the vitamins of chemistry, used to make everything from scoreboards to digital displays to computers to iPhones to technology. It really is the stuff of electronics. And of course, 73% of all the rare earth metals mined in the world come out of China. And there was a few years back, and of course they've threatened to pull back on that, threatening to, shut down the electronics manufacturing business and imports in the U.S. and such. You remember a couple of years back, they tried to do the same thing with Japan. And what happened was, because of the very reasons I talked about earlier, it's not the most honest country in the world. Chinese smugglers found a way to get the stuff out of the country, and Japanese buyers bought it still. I think this dishonest, sort of fragile political ecosystem that exists is something that we need to take into consideration when we start panicking about things like China. Don't you believe that, Tom?
I recall back when you and I were kids, when William F. Buckley Jr. was on Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
He was asked a question about Russia, and he said that Russia, or Soviet Union, the Soviet Union doesn't specialize in the truth.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And the same holds true of China. They are a communist dictatorship, and they have long-term goals to dominate the world, and they don't want to dominate it with cheap goods or for the purpose of giving people cheap goods. They want to dominate it because they want to militarily dominate. And so, no, this is why I say you just can't simply free trade with China.
Right.
Because China has military goals along with its trade, any more than we should free trade with Iran. Well, maybe not to the same degree, but look, Iran is very dangerous. We shouldn't does anybody listening think we should free trade with North Korea?
Right. Yeah,
no,
sure.
so there are times when you have to adjust your free trade goals to deal with the military and national security interests, and this is what the Trump administration is doing, which makes it hard on China. Now, look, this creates uncertainty for business. Business doesn't like military action. Business was against the American Revolution. It was against the Civil War. It was against World War I. It was against Smoot-Hawley tariffs. It was against World War II. It's always against war because it disrupts supply chains and commerce. But at the end of the day, sometimes you actually have to do things to adjust things for the future.
But so, Tom, what you brought up here, though, is something that I haven't brought up yet on any of the shows, not on Kogo, not on KUSI, not on Big Biz Show. And that is the fact that I cannot remember a time in my adult life, especially as a business analyst / expert / investor, where politics has intersected our business and our markets as much as it is right now. And I mean, now look, there's always international events that affect what goes on with our stock market, but there's also events that happen in Washington that do the same thing. But boy, could this be one of those times where, international news, global news, and not just because we're the global currency, but the fact of the matter is global noise is affecting this stock market maybe more than past stock markets. Am I getting that right? And if I am, will that subside anytime soon, or are we just going to see more of it going into the next election?
Well, in general, because the U.S. government is larger than ever before and has more impact on the economy than ever before, you will see government creating instability in the markets, because when they move their wrecking ball, it truly can wreck things at times. Or, look at it a different way, they have to cut, like, who wins the next election? Are we really going to outlaw private health care insurance? Mm-hmm. I mean, that creates enormous uncertainty. So, yes, and internationally, governments are larger as well, but they're also dealing with pretty significant issues. I mean, Brexit still creates uncertainty. So just in general, the larger the percentage government is of the economy, the greater risk of instability in the markets, depending on which direction and policies they take.
And of course, if we think in terms of misdirection, again, by going back to China's, what did you say there? The truth is not their strong suit. I can't remember how you put that.
They don't specialize.
They don't specialize in the truth. If you think in terms of that only goes to prove your point. Not to get too political here, but we are going into an election. And one thing that you pointed out that I don't think I ever really noticed until you pointed it out last year was, if you look at a chart of the Dow Jones going back to 2009, it's a pretty nice hockey stick going up, except for in election years where it sort of goes sideways. And boy, it never was that more true than last year when we had those midterm elections. We're going into 2020. This could turn out to be a pretty good year for the stock market. Certainly, it's a great year for the economy so far. Do you think that's going to flatten out again? Do you think your philosophy or your theory is going to hold true again for 2020 as we go into elections, or will that start early?
I think it'll start earlier. We're in a permanent cycle. It finished the last election, and the next election cycle started. So I think we're set for the Democrat debates. They're going to take policy positions significantly divergent from the existing the existing policies, and that's where uncertainty is created. And if there's a perception in the market come November, December of this year that for whatever reason they don't think Trump can win, right now they do think he can win, and so the markets, I think, are able to exhale in that regard. But if they ever come to the position that they don't think, it'll start this year, but for sure it'll start by next March, because look, the media is going to push in one direction. And by the way, I don't think it's going to be a landslide either way. And close elections, like we had last time around, have a way of spooking the markets. And so, I think election years, for as far as the eye can see, are going to be sideways years. There'll be good moments, there'll be bad moments.
And either way, fear and greed is going to take over as well. Tom, thank you so much. Once again, Tom Del Beccaro, politicalvanguard.com. The Divided Era, fantastic book, available on BarnesNoble.com, Amazon.com, all major booksellers. It's San Diego Business Saturday. I'm Sully. Coming up in a second, Mike Hess is going to tell you something really fun going on. News Radio 600 Kogo. Hey, it's San Diego Business Saturday on News Radio 600 Kogo. Welcome to your weekend. Great to have you along today. And it's Father's Day tomorrow. Did you know, by the way, I just have to tell you this. So first of all, both of my daughters are in town, which is a real treat for me, because they both live in different states now, because as they get older, and many of you have listened to me talk about these girls for 23 years on the radio, but I got them in town, but I'm trying to talk them into coming with me after Father's Day festivities down to Mike Hess Brewing, because there's $3 beers all day at Mike Hess Brewing. Go to any one of the tap rooms at Mike Hess. And no, they don't sponsor the show. I'm just saying this because that's where I'm going to go. You can go to Grimm Avenue. You can go to Mira Mesa or Miramar area. You can go down to IB. And you can get $3 beer all day. I don't know how you prove that you're a father, but you do that. But speaking of Mike Hess, we have featured him on the program a number of times. He's been on Big Biz Show. He's been on KUSI. He's been here as a featured CEO on San Diego Business Saturday. And I want to have him now because you're going to be hearing about an event all week on any number of my programs, because I'm going to be hanging out there next week. And it's something that I don't talk about a lot. Frankly, I sort of keep this separate from my business life and my media life. And it's the fact that I play in a band with a bunch of Grammy Award-winning musicians, and we've become relatively popular. We played Kaboo last year. We just got invited to tour with Kool and the Gang for this year. We got invited to play Kaboo Grand Cayman for next year, as well as Austin City Limits. So the last thing I expected was to have a music career, but it's actually happening, and you can go to sullyband.com. But the reason I bring that up is because we are headlining next week in a number of places. Tuesday night, Del Mar Powerhouse Park, opening of the Summer Concert Series season. We're going to be out there with a few thousand of our best friends in Del Mar. And then what I'm really looking forward to is next Saturday, June 22nd, from 11:30 a.m. until 5 p.m. And I think I go on at 3:30 or something, or 3:15. And we may stay longer. We normally do. But Hess Fest is happening. The 9th year of Mike Hess Brewing, and I think the 5th Hess Fest, but I'm bringing on Mike so we can talk about it because, A, he's one of my closest friends. His family's gone through a number of tough breaks with their daughter Keely and cancer, although from what I understand, chemo's over, right, Mike?
She's got one round left. Yeah,
one round left.
17 out of 18 done.
So we're done. So then things are looking good there. But look at on two very high notes. Or I should say a second and a third high note. You've got $3 beer tomorrow over.
Yeah.
So the best part about San Diego Business Saturday is when you get to talk about $3 beer Father's Day Sunday. So first of all, you're doing $3 beer at any one of your tasting locations tomorrow?
That's right.
Wow,
that's right.
That was just your idea, or has this happened before? Because I've never heard of anything like this.
I don't know that we've done it before. We generally don't discount the beer, but Dad's, with Father's Day, let's do it. We've got 4 locations here in San Diego. Let's bring some people in and have the dads help celebrate. Plus, it gives us a reason to tell our kids, hey, I got to go support Hess Brewing. So listen, let's talk about Hess Fest. Do I have this right? It is your 9th year in business as Mike Hess Brewing, but it is your 5th Hess Fest. Is that right? Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Because we didn't have the location at Grimm until like our second-ish year, and then so we did it the following summer. That was our first test fest.
So let's talk about it, because you got 25 breweries, you've got food vendors, you've got bands, and I do want to mention that we're bringing with us a young band called the Special Guests, and these are literally kids who are going to blow your socks off. They're going to play for, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 minutes before we go on stage. We're bringing them with us on a number of these concert series. But if you could come out and see these kids, that's why we're supporting them. But they'll be out there with us as well. But there's a lot of great bands there. Even better, though, there's a lot of great beer and a lot of great food. Talk about exactly what you get, because there's a VIP ticket, which includes early admission and some exclusive beer tastings. But there's also a GA ticket, which has an awful lot of stuff. Why don't you talk about both of those things for us?
Right, yeah, for sure. Okay, so both tickets, VIP and GA, get you into the beer festival, and we shut down Grimm Avenue between University and North Parkway, which is essentially right at our front door for our brewery and tasting room there in North Park. Closed down the whole street and the parking lot. We've got all the 25 beer vendors, all independent craft brewers, even some from out of state, set up their booth there. You get unlimited tastes. We've also got 9 food vendors, and your ticket includes 4 tastes from any one of the 9 food vendors, and then you're also able to buy.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want more, you can buy more, but you kind of taste the 4 that you want, and you go from that, right?
Right. Exactly. But the VIP ticket gets you inside the brewery starting at 11:30, and in there is where you get to try any number of unique one-off collaboration beers that we did, where we used our beer. It's called My Other Vice. It's a German-style beer, the Berliner Weiss, that we have made with each of the other breweries that are participating in the festival, like Resident and Three Punks and Pizza Port, South Park Brewing Co., Karl Strauss. Everybody has put their own spin on this beer and made a one-off keg for the VIP event. So if you're into the sour beer thing and you like the one-off unique ticket punching type of beers, that's the event for you, the VIP. And then you try the sour beers, and then you can go out to the festival and listen to music and play cornhole and try all the rest of the beers out on the festival.
Don't you have like the National Cornhole Association or something out? Did I hear something about like there's a governing body of cornhole going to be out there this time?
It's surprisingly competitive. Last year we did a tournament. We had regular organizers there. They had iPad, the whole thing. They said, who wants to play? We had like 40 teams sign up. There's no cost. Prizes to the top 3. It was very well run. We had 10 sets of boards. It's a super fun thing to do at the festival. We're doing the same thing again this year. I
will tell you that also, and I don't know if I'm breaking news here or not, but I had a conversation with the mayor, and I told him, because he is a fan of the band, and he's also a fan of beer, and I told him that he needs to come out and pay a visit to HessFest this year. Well, from what I understand, I'm not sure if you know this or not, so I'm going to break this live here on News Radio 600 Kogo, San Diego Business Saturday. He's going to be at the HessFest Festival at 1 p.m. on June 22nd to present a proclamation from the stage. Now, is it going to be Sully Day? Is it going to be HessFest Day? Is it going to be Mike Hess Brewing Day? Is it going to be Mike Hess? Do you have any idea? Is this new to you, or were you aware of this?
If the mayor shows up to HessFest, I don't care what day he calls it. It could be Sully Day. That would be just fine, Sully, because I know you had everything to do with it. So we'd be thrilled to have Mayor Faulkner there, and I can't wait to have him there at HessFest. That'd be really cool.
It'll be cool, and get a chance to talk to him and such. Also, we'll be there. Rusty Nails will be there. I think I can talk Chris Merrill into coming down, and Ted LaDon, although not in official capacity, but a beer drinking capacity. I have to talk about the ecosystem of craft beer in this city, and you and I have talked about it a number of times on television, on and off the air, as well as TV. I beg your pardon, as well as radio. And I think when I first started talking to you, there was 113 craft breweries in San Diego. Now what are we up to, 160 or something like that in San Diego?
Yeah, it's about that. Yep.
And you call it coopetition. I've called it frenemies. But what's really interesting is that as much competition as there is for craft beer in San Diego, you guys all sort of get along and you sort of work together en masse to try to move the whole ball forward down the court together. Talk about that. About that ecosystem a little bit here in San Diego.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, it is coopetition. We are all trying to get our message out to the public that we are independent, many times family-owned craft brewers. We don't have anywhere near the scale of operation of the AB and the Miller Coors houses and the Constellation brands, and it's not even close. It's not 10 to 1. It's 1,000 to 1 type scale. So we're really playing on a whole different ball field, and we're trying to bring great flavor and well-made beers to the public. And so we all have a common goal in getting people to drink great beer. So, and a perfect example of this competition is the VIP Fest, right, where we've got all these breweries who are working with our base beer to make these unique collaboration beers for our VIP guests.
Hey, I have to ask you this because the craft beer industry continues to thrive here in San Diego. And if you look at the reports coming from the San Diego Brewers Guild and the San Diego Economic Development Council, you find out that there's $24 billion. That's $24 billion nationwide in the craft beer industry. And California craft beers produce about 3.65 gallons of craft beer per capita compared to the national average of 3.2 gallons. So we are literally the craft beer capital of the world. We still rank as the top county in the nation with 160 craft breweries. And we're going to produce an economic impact here in San Diego of about $900 million in output for this next year. That number represents twice the output of the San Diego Zoo as a comparison. It is literally what a Super Bowl does when they come to a town. You contribute also, $100 million in taxes to the city. And of course, there's philanthropy of $4.5 million every year from your industry, which we'll talk about in a second. Do you see any slowing down on the horizon, Mike? Is this going to stay like this for a while?
You know, I think that there's going to be, there's still a lot of breweries in planning. There's 998 breweries right now in California, and there are still hundreds in planning. So I think that there's going to be a model shift, I think, in the type of way that businesses open up, like what their goal is. And I think there's going to be a lot more just breweries who are just fine being the neighborhood brewery. Yeah. And we're seeing a lot of that. You know, and there's no longer people saying, I'm going to be a big national brand. I don't think that's the goal of any of the folks that are coming into business now. They just want to be the local spot, and they want to make and control the quality and control the ingredients and have their own team and that type of thing. And I think we're seeing a lot of that.
Hey, last of all, 30 seconds or less. What are the three charities that we're supporting for Hess Fest this year on Saturday, June 22nd, 11:30 to 5 p.m.? We got the Navy SEAL Foundation, correct?
Yep.
Well, and we
San Diego Music Foundation.
San Diego Music Foundation.
And lastly, go ahead.
No, you got Music Foundation puts guitars in everybody's hands in San Diego, all the kids' hands in San Diego. Navy SEAL Foundation, obviously supporting the SEAL families. And what's the last one?
The last one is an organization out of Los Angeles called Poblove, and they fund underfunded, cutting-edge pediatric cancer research. So they do seed grants that allow scientists to go get the $1 million grants. They're doing like $50,000 to $100,000 grants typically, of people who just have an idea on immunotherapy or something. This
is fantastic, and of course, your daughter Keely was a beneficiary of that very sort of cutting-edge technology. Thank you, Mike. We'll be talking about this all week on KOGO and KUSI Hess Fest. It's San Diego Business Saturday. Have a great Father's Day weekend. News Radio 600 KOGO.